He came to the city by night, with the stink of the river thick in his hair and the taste of iron at the back of his throat. The sky above King's Landing was low and swollen, cloud-bellied, with a westerly wind that dragged in the reek of the mudflats and the latrines and the kills. The walls rose ahead, serried gray, pitted with the black knot-holes of murder slits, the merlins chipped like old teeth. He had not seen those walls in a year, and in his dreams he had seen them afire. Many would pay to be spirited in. The man in the skiff had murmured, an old fisherman with knotted hands. Most want to be carried out. Tonight I do both, Jaime had said. The skiff hissed along the water, men breathing silently. He wore a patched jerkin and a hood and no golden lion anywhere. His sword was bound in old cloth, its pommel wrapped in oiled leather to hide the shape a hilt will make when torchlight glances it. He counted the strokes between pilings, between the tarred posts from which the chain across the river could be raised, and he thought of another chain and another king. Every drop of the Blackwater had carried a whisper of wildfire these last weeks. He heard it in the soft slap against wood, smelled it beneath the scum and tar, that green, treacherous promise. They slid into a shadow under the wharf. A figure loosened from the gloom, plump in silhouette, a spider that wore human form and soft shoes that made no sound. "You do like to return at inconvenient hours," Varys whispered. "Do keep your hood up, sir. King's Landing remembers blonde men with better love than with gratitude." "I'm not here for the city's love," Jaime said. "Only for its life." "Ah," said Varys, folding his hands. "And whose?" "All of them. None of them." A sudden, dizzy memory rose. A king in gilded mail with bile on his chin, screaming "burn them all," and a smell under it that was not fire but piss and fear. When he could speak, he said, "The queen is gathering wildfire in places the pyromancers would not dare to store salts or oil. She means to, if the walls fall, she would rather no walls stand at all." "You have been away," Varys said, "but not blind." "The road talks," Jaime replied, thinking of men in mill yards and tanners' alleys telling pretty stories for food. "And there were letters meant for other eyes." "Then you know what your brother does," said Varys, a little amusement threading the words. "And what your sister would do to thwart him." "I mean to thwart her," Jaime said. Varys's eyes went soft and wet. "Love is a tricky blade," he murmured. "Love has no say," Jaime said, but the words bit his tongue like winter air. He stepped from the skiff to the mold-slick steps, every bone knowing the rhythm of this city, the way the stones sweat when a storm is near, the way torch smoke leans and flattens before the wind changes, the broken tooth of a stair where a mason once fell and no one smoothed it. Through tunnels and service doors, through a guardroom where two men slept with their chins on their chests and their spears across their knees, he passed, until the smell of onion and smoke and vellum told him he had reached the Tower of the Hand. Varys's key found a lock and made a lover's sigh of surrender. Tyrion sat in a pool of lamplight, bare feet on a cold rush mat, bent over a map weighted with knives. His hair was a wild rust of shadow. Wine darkened the skin around his mouth. He was making his little ships dance with a finger, pushing Stannis's painted fleet toward the mouth of the river. The chain was drawn as a black rope across the page. Bronn sat with a boot on the table, scraping mud from its heel with a dagger. Podrick Payne dozed upright in a chair, his chin dipping and jerking. Shae was not there. Jaime had hoped she would not be. Tyrion looked up. The scar in his nose bent the light strangely, though there was no scar there, not yet. For a heartbeat he simply stared. Then he laughed, low, incredulous. "Seven save us," he said. "Either I am very drunk or you have ruined my night in a new and unexpected way." Jaime pulled down his hood. The room seemed to breathe. "You're not meant to be here," Tyrion went on, rising, holding the table with both hands. "You are meant to be draped with irons somewhere north, admired by wolves. Wolves are poor conversationalists." Jaime took in the map. "The chain will do it." "If the pyromancers don't wet themselves," Bronn muttered. "Half the city will wet itself when that green piss lights." "Half of what city?" Jaime said, and the sound of his voice made all three men look. If Cersei has her way, none at all. Tyrion's mouth went from curved to flat. I wondered how many ears my sister had bought that I had not sliced off for her. I suppose she bought yours long ago. She's hoarding wildfire, Jaime said. Not in the Guildhall, not in the alchemist's cellars. In the tunnels beneath the Street of Sisters. In Flea Bottom, in the vaults of Maegor's Holdfast. In the granaries. She tells herself it is a safeguard. She will say she keeps it to deny it to Stannis. She will use it to deny him everything if she must. And you, Tyrion said softly, you would stop her. I once slew a king who loved wildfire too well, Jaime said. I will not see another. He had not meant to let the word slew slip out so harshly, so quickly, but it was a relief to say it. Aerys still smelled of piss. Tyrion looked at him with those cool, calculating eyes that stripped armor to bone. You have been the left hand on Cersei's right for half your life, he said. Why now? Jaime had no word that would not betray himself in some way. Because I can, he said in the end. Because it is the only thing that makes sense to me tonight. Tyrion nodded once. Bronn, wake the pyromancer. Haelene. Bronn frowned. That wax rat will do whatever the queen tells him. He will do what the city needs, Tyrion said. Or he will die being of no use to anyone, in which case I will find a more useful pyromancer. It isn't enough to frighten him, Jaime said. He is afraid of everything. He stepped close to the map. You've put your chain low in the river. You may trap them by half. That is good if your fire eats half. It will not eat the other half if Cersei lights the granaries or the tunnels to the September. Ah, Tyrion said. The September. I am always talked at about the September. He rubbed his face. Why aren't you north in irons? Because I broke the irons, Jaime said. Because a woman decided her vow mattered to her more than mine did to me. Because fortune laughs. The woman had blue eyes and a mouth that called him monster and liar and man in turns. But he would not think of her now. Tyrion looked at his own hands. Pod, he said softly. Go and fetch Haelene. And those two acolytes who trail him like a pair of wet shadows. Bring them quietly. Tell no one where they're to be found. Bronn, rouse a dozen of your friends who do not mind being hated for coin. We are going to pay them to stand in the dark with their swords put to jelly's throats. And what will you be doing? Bronn asked. I shall be writing a letter, Tyrion said. 2 letters. Ser Jaime. Forgive me. I must call you that in my own rooms to believe it. Is the queen aware that you ride the city like a thief? She will be, Jaime said. Lancel is too slow to lie for her without tripping over the lies he told last. Tyrion's left eye flicked. Oh, sweet Lancel. If I squeeze him any harder, there will be only squeaks. Jaime pictured Cersei's mouth when she discovered him in the city and felt something flare and sting in his chest. He had not been back since their last quarrel. She had left blood on his lip and his ear ringing. Do not go to her, he told himself once more, and then aloud to Tyrion. The small folk will run when they see green fire. Hold your men fast. Find me something worth holding them for, Tyrion said with sudden heat. Find me an end to these rumors. Find me something true in a city built from lies. Truth is simple, Jaime said, and he surprised himself by the hardness of his voice. Do not burn them. Do not burn the bakers and the whores and the little boys who climb the gatehouse to watch for sales. If the walls fall, let them fall. Stone breaks. If you set fire under the stone breaks and the bones under it. Tyrion studied him for a long time. Then he held out the quill. Write it with me, he said. We will tell the pyromancer what will happen to him if any green flame dances where I have not told it to dance. And we will post men at his breath. What would father say? Jaime said lightly, taking the quill. That, Tyrion said, depends on which way the wind is blowing in the morning. The city breathed faster when dawn pried up the river fog. By midday, the drums were beating along the walls. The Blackwater was full of shadows. Oars dipping, black sails swelling, gulls wheeling with the fish gleam in their eyes. From the ramparts, the men shouted, and the shouts came back thin from the water like a song you heard through a closed door. Joffrey wore his antlered helm and a smile like a boy picking wings from flies. Cersei watched from the tower with her goblet of strong wine, purple stains on her mouth. Sansa walked beside her with hands clasped in front of her. She was very still, like a girl who had learned to let the beating hands hit water, not skin. The Hound paced the gateyard, his cloak snapping. The air tasted of rain held back by hot stones. Jaime kept to the shadows of the king's wall walk until he had to take the light and be seen. He put on a helmet with a half-visor and no crest. He had no lion on him anywhere. "The chain," Tyrion said to him on the rampart, "will lift when I give the word. Bronn will set the first fire. After that, gods be good to us. I expect they will be too busy." "Do not count on gods," Jaime said. "I never do," Tyrion replied pleasantly. The fleet slid closer. Stannis' banners hung dull. Jaime thought of Davos Seaworth, whom he had never met, who smuggled onions into a starving city once and received a knighthood for it. He wondered if Davos would smell the wildfire before the rest. Some men could taste danger as if it were a spice in the air. In the Queen's tower, Cersei curled her fingers around her goblet and called for Sansa to sing. "Sing," she said. "I like to hear you sing when men are dying. It makes it all so civilized." Sansa's voice rose thinly above the drums. Singing river quiet or prayer, Jaime could not tell. The bells in the sept were still. He imagined them waking to a city that burned and wringing themselves hoarse, too late to be anything but music for ghosts. Bronn raised his longbow. "Now," Tyrion said. The arrow looked like any arrow until it kissed the water. The river lurched green. It was not like other fire. It was a thing that carried itself, that sought itself, that was greed made visible. It followed the slick and the spillage and the sudden plumes. It ate. A wall of it lifted, lit by itself, and for a heartbeat the world was only that emerald roar. Jaime's stomach turned. Across the water men screamed, and not all the screams were from men who wore Stannis' colors. "Tilt the pots," someone shouted below. "Fetch more from the stores." "No more," Tyrion bellowed through his cupped hands, and Bronn's profanity carried a beat behind. "No more. Hold them until I say." The chain rose with a rattle that turned to a groan turned to song. The trapped ships staggered and crowded like cattle in a chute. Some tried to tack, some slid backward, oars snapped, flags fell. Another gout of green climbed the sky and drew its ladder back in tongues. The Hound stopped walking. He watched, eyed the fire with the flat stare of a man looking at his own funeral. "Send the Kingsguard," Joffrey said. "I want them at the gate." "They are already there," Tyrion told him and turned to Jaime. "Go." Jaime ran. He ran past men crossing themselves, men vomiting, men laughing, men weeping. He passed a boy with a bone whistle in his fist and a man warming his hands at a brazier and a woman who had brought bread to the walls because she believed there was nothing else to be done. He doffed his helmet to spit and put it back on. The mud gate roared. Stannis' men landed on mud that slipped underfoot like pies left in rain. They came in their thousands with shields and siege ladders, their steel dull, their wood wet, their faces lean. Men in his own colors shouted from the parapets and drank cheap wine from the skin and flung it away. A barrel of boiling oil went over and steam hissed and turned thick with the smell of meat. Sandor Clegane stared at the puddles of green where the river licked the bank. "Back," he said to no one. "Back." When Joffrey rode in, he knelt and held the boy's stirrup because that was the part that never left you. What you had sworn when your mouth was clean and empty of blood. "Dog," Joff said loudly. He liked to be heard. He always had. "I want you at the vanguard. Kill me some stags." Sandor did not look at the king. He stared at the fire where it spat and danced. "Fires," he said softly. "I hate them." "Your Grace," Tyrion said, and there was patience in his voice and a metal edge under it. "I suggest we leave our dear Hound to the gate and take ourselves somewhere our banners cannot be plucked off us like lice." "Leave," Joffrey squeaked. "I am the king. You are a boy who has never cut bread for himself." Tyrion said, and Joff's face went the color of spilled milk. "Leave," he repeated. "I will make a song of it for you later." They drew him away with coaxing, with flattery, with 3 men and then 5. Lancel ran between the 2 companies, half armor and half silk. A messenger the wind blew. He clutched his side as if to keep his breath from spilling out. Jaime put one hand on his shoulder as the boy careened near. "Tell the queen," Jaime said, because he could smell Cersei's name on the boy like perfume. "Tell her to sit down and drink water and do nothing else. Do you understand me, Lancel?" "Nothing." Lancel flinched and he nodded and he fled, carrying away that command like a coin he would spend and deny he spent. Jaime drew his sword and the wind found the edge and made a sound there. "Sare," a gold cloak said, and then he looked at the visor and did not know. Jaime did not want him to know. "Hold the right flank," he told the man. "Do not chase. If they push up the ladder, cut the ladder. Do not cut, push. Men are heavier when they are afraid." The first enemy came up the ramp like a tide. The hound stood and did not move toward them. "Back," Sandor whispered to himself. "Back! You!" Jaime pointed to the nearest watch officer, a gray-bearded man with blackened teeth. "Keep your eyes on him. If he turns his back on the gate, you will put your spear in his leg and scream that it was an accident. Do you hear me?" The old man's mouth fell open. He looked at the hound and back at Jaime. He nodded. "Back," Sandor said louder, and then louder still, "Back!" He flung his torch aside as if it had burned him and walked away into the press. The old man took a step after him and then a second and then did not put his spear anywhere because this was the hound and you did not spear the hound. "Fuck the Kingsguard," Sandor said to someone who tried to stop him, and the words bit like wind across steel. Jaime did not look after him. He ran onto the ramp and threw himself into the press like a man leaps into water knowing the river will decide if he swims. His sword felt like a part of him again. He kept it low, kissed a shin, tore muscle. He raised it. A shield met it and his arm jarred and he adjusted his grip and the second blow went around the shield and found the softness under an arm. He moved without thinking and yet all he did was think. There and save your shoulder and use your hip and step on the wood not the mud because wood bites your boot and mud sets you to skates. A ladder rose beside him and he shoved at it and the hands on it clutched as if the ladder were their mother. Men fell with their mouths open around their screams, and then there was no room for ladders because the bodies under them made a ridge. Jaime's neck ached. He wanted water. He wanted the bells to ring. He wanted forward. Tyrion cried somewhere near his feet, absurdly small on his horse, eyes bright. "With me, through the postern, through." Jaime saw the gatehouse levers lift and a small door crack open. He could not see what waited beyond it. He did not need to. He shouted wordlessly and the men around him shouted too, because sound can be a bridge and a sword and a hand on your back. They pushed through the gap and fell upon the first stag they saw. The enemy had made a little wedge on the bank and planted it deep and angry in the city's mud. Jaime's foot slid, found a stone, held. He cut at an axe haft, stepped inside the man's arms, used the flat of his blade across the face hard enough to drop him to one knee, kicked him there, moved. He felt suddenly light and clean, as if the world had shrunk to the span of his sword and the breath in his chest. He had forgotten this. He had not forgotten this. The first counterpush was a wave that broke and fell back. Men cheered. Someone was singing, madly, a bawdy tune with words that made no sense now. Jaime laughed without knowing he was laughing. The second push came with better men, men who had not slipped yet, men who knew where to put their feet and when to scream. Tyrion was there, his small blade flickering like a mouse's tail. He was not a great fighter, but he was a great man to watch while fighting. He went where his men saw him, he shouted what they needed to hear, he made courage into a coin, and men spend courage when they know someone will pay them back with his own. Then the world narrowed further. A white cloak came out of the swirl as if it had been coiled there all along. The face above it was pale and smooth and without lines, and the eyes were black and empty as wells. Ser Mandon Mur, protect the hand. Someone shouted, and Mandon moved to do it. He moved toward Tyrion with his sword down, as if he meant to cut a shrub among two tall grass. Jaime saw it like the first crack in a dam. He did not shout. He did not think. He slid between a man and a polearm as if he were smoke, and his blade came up under Mandon's sword and turned it a hair's breadth from where it went, and that hair's breadth was the difference between the back of Tyrion's skull and the hinge of Tyrion's jaw. Mandon's second stroke would have finished it. Jaime bit on the thought. Burst it. Mandon cut. Jaime caught it, and his shoulder rang, and he gave back the blow, and Mandon's lips split like fruit. No expression moved in those eyes. They fought under the postern's shadow, where the torch smoked and the air was thick with the stink of hot wax and men. Someone jostled Jaime, and he used the jostle, putting more body behind the blow. Mandon tried for the quick, the sly. Jaime had seen 100 men try for the quick and the sly. He had killed 50. He made his blade a wall. He stepped into Mandon's guard, shoulder to shoulder, and they heaved like wrestlers, and then Jaime's knee found Mandon's thigh, and his elbow found Mandon's throat, and his sword found the small gap where plates meet plates, under the breast, above the belly, where a man wants no steel. Mandon looked surprised. His eyes left Jaime's for the first time and went, oddly, left toward Tyrion. Then the life drained from that white face, and the sword slipped, and the body did too, and fell in the muck. Tyrion stood with blood on his cheek and a look on his face that said he would laugh and cry and kill and bless in one breath. Then there was more blood because another man, not Mandon, some soldier in a red-brown surcoat, swung a half-spear, and its broken wood glanced off a helm and caught Tyrion across the face. It was a glancing blow, ugly, but the hand's cheek split and his ear went red and he staggered. Jaime caught him by the arm. "Stay," he said. "Stay." Tyrion barked, and there was laughter in the pain. "You stay. I will go and be glorious." "Glorious little fool," Jaime said, and pushed him toward the gate. "Bronn, keep him where he can be seen and not killed." Bronn said something that sounded like an insult, and 4 men moved to wrap themselves around Tyrion like a second skin. The second push broke. The third carried stones. The stones speak too in battle. They thunk and sing and bring down luck and reason alike. Jaime took one on the rim of his visor and saw sparks. Bright red, not green. He shook them away. A runner stumbled into him, breathless and pale, smelling of sweat and horse. "My lord," gasped the boy who had been Lancel. My sire, my lord, the queen I told you to tell her to do nothing," Jaime said, more softly than he felt. "She has the boy." Lancel's mouth worked. She has Tommen on her lap," she said. "She said if the walls, if the gate, if the hound. She said she will not go to him alive." "Alive to whom?" Jaime asked, though he knew. The word tasted of ash. He wanted to drop his sword and run. He wanted to stay where he was and break the next man. He wanted to take his cloak and wrap it around the world until it stopped shaking. "Stannis?" Lancel whispered, and flinched as if the name had bitten him. "My lord, she has called for the pyromancer. She has she has the fuses for." Jaime did not hear the rest. He shoved the boy aside gently and, without the gentleness in his heart, plunged back through the press to the gate. The air was blades. He ran with men at his shoulder and men on his heels, and men who saw only a white gem guttering through the smoke. He threw himself up the stairs and across the yard and into the west corridor of Maegor's Holdfast, and he took the last flight 2 at a time, and in his chest something beat like a caught bird that would either break its own neck or the hand that held it. He shoved the great door with his shoulder, and it did not give. He put his shoulder into it again. A guard in lion red raised his halberd. "In there," Jaime said. "My lord," said the guard, and he knew Jaime then. He knew him by the jaw and the set of the eyes, because the white cloak was enough and the movement was enough, and some men are born to be seen. The guard stepped aside. Jaime thrust into the Queen's Hall with his sword bare. The room smelled of tallow and myrrh and fear. Cersei sat on the throne with Tommen in her lap. Tommen's hair was a pale banner that wanted wind to lift it. Instead, tears. Island Payne stood by with his sword across his knees like a prayer that had not found a god. Sansa had retreated to a pillar, hands tight, mouth tighter. Pycelle drooped in the corner like a broken wax image of a man. Haleen the pyromancer stood near the dais with the most careful smile Jaime had ever seen. At his feet lay cords that looked indifferent in the torchlight and a squat jar in iron hoops, sealed with a wax cap that gleamed faintly green. "What are you doing?" Cersei said. Her voice had a curl to it, delight and rage licking hands. "You should be at the gate. Your place is at the gate." "My place," Jaime said, "is where I can keep you from turning our city into a kiln." "Your city," she said, drawing the words out, tasting them like a sweet that would crack her teeth. "Do you remember our city when we were children? The SME. LL? Overripe fruit in the markets, dog offal in the gutters, the heat like a hand on your mouth? Do you remember the men who pinched me and you cut their fingers off one by one?" I laughed. "I remember," Jaime said. "I will not let Stannis touch this city the way those men touched me," she said. Tommen pressed his face into her breastbone and clutched the gold chain there and made a little sound. "He will have my ashes if he wants me. He will choke on them." "Give me the jar," Jaime said to Haleen. Haleen licked his lips. "My lord, sire, I am sworn." "Break the oath," Jaime said. "I am sworn to the queen," Haleen said. Sweat ran from his temples like cheap oil. "You are sworn to the city," Jaime said, and something inside him grew suddenly terribly calm. "And I am telling you as a sworn brother of the Kingsguard, no, as a man whose soul is not a burnt rag, that if you strike that spark, I will cut your head from your neck and piss down your throat while your mouth is still warm. And then I will find your acolytes and do the same to them and to their cats and to the cats who have not yet been born of the cats you feed. Give me the jar." Haleen's mouth opened and closed. He bent. He reached. His hands shook. He lifted the jar and held it as if it were a child or a god. Jaime lifted it from him. It was heavier than he had expected. It hummed faintly, as if the casters at the Guildhall had put a bee in it for a heart. Cersei tipped her head, bird-like. "You dare." She had set down her goblet. The stain on her mouth looked like a bruise now. "You come to me in my hall with our son in my arms, and you dare." "I dare," Jaime said, "because this is not your hall. It is the city's hall, and he is not yours. He is the city's, too." She rose so slowly that each joint's movement might have been another person standing. She set Tommen aside and he clung to her, and Sansa moved without being told and gathered him and rocked him on her feet like a babe being soothed by a girl who had never born or soothed a babe. Cersei stepped down from the dais. The steel in her gaze had no sheen. "You were always weak with them," she said, voice like silk braided with hair. "With the stupid and the ugly and the poor. You wanted them to love you because you never loved yourself enough." "I never loved you enough," he said, the truth a relief and a wound. She smiled suddenly, bright as a knife. "There it is," she said, and made a move with her hand. Island pain surged up, sword lifting. Jaime moved before thought. His blade came up and inside Island's in one smooth line, and the two bit and shrieked, and Island had a dead man's eyes so nothing moved in them. Jaime's knee took Island above the greave and Island gave no sound, but his sword dropped a hand's breadth. Jaime's twisted and dove and found the point in the seam where leather bites steel, and his blade kissed the meat at Island's hip. Blood welled. Island's mouth opened and no sound came, and his sword chopped down blindly. The torches spat. Jaime struck Island's wrist with the flat, and bone made a sound like a stick in children's games. The sword fell. Jaime kicked it away. "Sit," he told Island. Island sat. Cersei laughed, one sharp little bird note. She had a little knife in her hand where no one had seen it. She stepped in and the knife's edge drew a kiss along Jaime's jaw, quick and wet. He let himself turn with it, took the sting, caught her wrist. The knife fell. He caught it left-handed and tossed it. It stuck point down in the rushes with a sound like a small animal dying. "You will not do this," she said, very soft. "You will not betray me." "I have already done it," he said. He reached for the cords, felt them with his hand, felt the tacky smear of pitch. A fuse. He stepped back, lifted the jar, set it gently on the table beneath the dais. He lifted the other jars, the smaller ones in their cunning iron carapaces. 3, 5, 7. Gods, how many had she brought up here to cradle like infants? He stacked them like skulls in the ossuary, one atop the other, and then he moved to the door and barked for guards who would stand on them with both boots and their lives. Cersei did not move from in front of him. She stepped close, close enough that he could smell her hair and count the flecks of wine in her eyes. "If the city falls," she whispered, breath sodden as a plum, "you will come with me. We will leave a cradle on the throne. We will leave the boy sleeping and he will not wake. He will be safe. If he does not wake, he will be safe. You will take me by the hand and we will go into the dark and you will carry me across as you carried me across the fish pond when we were 7. I will carry you nowhere," he said, and she flinched as if struck. "Get out," she said to Sansa, who had done nothing but breathe and hold a sobbing boy. Take him to the sept if you like. Pray at the feet of your fat god. Pray to your dead father. Pray for the river to turn around and run backward." Sansa did as she was told. She did it without looking at anyone but Tommen, and that was perhaps the bravest thing in the hall. Pycelle woke enough to wheeze something about the gods and loyalty. Haelene had his hands tucked under his armpits as if to keep them from touching anything. Island bled on the floor and looked at the blood as if he could read his own fate in it. Jaime stepped aside to let Sansa and the little prince pass. She did not meet his eyes, but Tommen did. Tommen's eyes were huge and wet and trusting. Why, those eyes asked, "Why are we here if not to be safe?" "Go," Jaime said softly. Sansa went. Her skirt brushed his boot. He turned back to Cersei. "Hear me," he said, and all the anger and love and shame burned away, and what was left was a white, bright thing as clean as bone. "If you ever light one of those jars without my brother's order on a day like this again, I will be your Ares. I will be the king who died with a sword in his back. I will be your end. Do you believe me?" She stared. The curl went out of her mouth and left a line as fine as thread. "Yes," she said, and her voice cracked, and that was more shocking than the wildfire had been, and it hurt him in a place he did not have a name for. Then she said, "Get out." He left her to the throne's hard elbows and the green echoes in the torches. He left Haelene under 6 eyes and the jars under 12 boots and Island with a bleeding hip and a face that did not deserve mercy and would not remember it. He ran back into the day. The gate had held, or it had not held and had been held up like a drunk by 3 friends. Jaime could not tell from the first breath of it. There were more bodies in the mud and more green scurf along the bank, and the shouting had hoarsened so that all the voices sounded related. He saw Tyrion on the wall with a bandage cocked across his face and a goofy little smile that made him look like a boy who had kissed a girl and expected to die for it. Bronn's cloak was black with blood, and he was singing something obscene in a pleasant baritone as he shot a man through the neck at a range that made the feet rude. "Did you?" Tyrion began. "I did," Jaime said. "You?" Tyrion blinked. He put a finger to the bandage as if to remind himself there was a face under it. "You did," he said. "Good. Well, ha." He looked at the river and his mouth made a sour shape. "They are not done." "No," Jaime said. A sound came from the north like thunder that remembered it used to be hooves. Men turned their heads. The banners above the king's gate flickered as if a new wind had taken them. The first trumpet blew, then the second, a third deeper under the others like a drum under a drum. "Mother's mercy," said Bronn, not reverently at all. "We are to be saved or killed twice over." The new banners were green and gold and field flowers blooming. They came like spring over a winter field, gilded at spear point and Bouthiel, and for a moment the city forgot to be afraid and simply gaped. The Tyrells had come with their rose crowns and their fat men in bright mail, and with them Lord Tywin's red river of steel, cold and implacable and greedy as the man who rode at its head. The gate cried out as if relieved. The men on the bank looked once behind, and their eyes changed the way eyes do when something they have not hoped for arrives and tells them they have been fools not to hope. Stannis's men looked once, and then again, and then they looked for their command and found the water instead. Lord Tywin rode with his face like stone, a spear of light hard in his hand where the sun had come from under its hood. The Rose men went first because they liked to show how bright they were. Behind them the lions came, and the city made a sound that was not quite a cheer and not quite a sob. Someone on the wall fell to his knees. Someone else threw up. Now, Jaime thought, now, before the light in us goes out again, press. He pressed. He went across the postern and into the wedge left like a toothpick in a rotten plank. He went with men behind him who shouted his name, even though he wore no crest and had not told it to them. Ser, they cried, and Ser, and a name or two that were not his, and one of those names was Kingsguard, and he laughed under his breath. The Rose men cut and screamed like choir boys at their own shrieking. Stannis' best held the ground with wet boots and hard knuckles and died like men who had counted their days and found them enough. The lions closed the flank. The river took its share, sucking men off the bank, swirling them out among the wreckage of ships and floating siege ladders. The green fire burned in an oxbow where the oil had pooled, and in it a mast toppled slowly like a prayer refused. Jaime killed a knight in seahorse blue, barely seeing him as a man, only as a shape in the way of the shape that was the city. His shoulder burned. His jaw bled where Cersei's knife had kissed him. He tasted iron and ash and something bitter that might have been despair if he had had time for it. When it was done, the air shook with hooves and trumpet and men trying to pretend they were not sobbing. The bells began to ring because someone made them. The sound jumped from one steeple to another like boys across stepping stones, irregular and perfect. The sun broke the last of the low clouds and made each green puddle a tarnished mirror. Jaime wiped his blade on a dead man's cloak and sheathed it and stood very still. He saw Tyrion on the wall, his hand to his cheek, his mouth moving. He was speaking to someone Rodgers had known, some guard, some page. The words would become a quip later and a shrug and a story, but now they were simply breath and blood. He saw Varys, a gray blot like a misshapen bird in a balcony, clapping his hands softly. He saw Sandor Clegane not at all, and that absence was as loud as if the man had been there with a bell on his breast. He saw a curl of smoke lifting from the Queen's Tower that was only torch smoke, ordinary and brown, and the sight made him feel suddenly like a boy who had run until he shat himself in a ditch and hoped no one would come downwind of him. He climbed to the wall. His legs were meat. The rampart stones were warm now, the day having had its way with them. Tyrion looked up at him with eyes that had seen the same thing and decided not to be weak for it. "If I kiss you," Tyrion said, "people will talk. People always talk," Jaime said. He touched the bandage to see how tight it went, and Tyrion did not flinch, which was courageous and stupid both. "You will need stitches. Bronn says the better scars are the ones you've earned on the wrong end of chance. Bronn says that because he has no face worth saving," Jaime said. "Do you know," Tyrion said then, small change clicking into a new hand, "what you just did? I killed a few men and saved a few more," Jaime said. "You betrayed our sister," Tyrion said, "and you saved the city. In that order, in that measure." "Not in that order," Jaime said, but he did not fight the rest of it. Tyrion grinned crookedly. "They will sing about you the way they sing about men who are not there when their songs are sung." "I do not want songs," Jaime said. "I want sleep." "You will not have that either," said a dry voice behind them, all gravel and parched earth. Lord Tywin did not smile, did not frown, did not do anything that could be mistaken for feeling. The air changed near him as if it suddenly belonged to him. Loras Tyrell was at his shoulder, his helm under his arm, his hair as bright as any lion's mane. He looked at Jaime as if he were a story already and himself the teller. "Father," Jaime said. He had thought to say more. He couldn't think of what. "You are not in chains," Tywin observed. "Not today," Jaime said. Loras leaned in with young heat. "You killed Ser Mandon," he said. "I saw him." He touched his own white cloak where a bloody smear marred the linen. "I saw him not get up." "I did," Jaime said. "You killed a Kingsguard," Loras said. Not accusation, not praise, only wonder at the name of it. "I killed a traitor," Jaime said. "Small words," Tywin snapped. "Small men use small words to justify small things. You will come with me to the throne room. We will arrange what needs arranging." "What needs arranging?" Tyrion asked blandly. "This city," Tywin said, Arrange it gently, Tyrion said. It nearly died today. Tywin did not honor him with a glance. His gaze took in the green puddles, the broken bows in the yard, the thickening lines of bodies where the carts had begun to pass, the cluster around the hound's absence that was the shape of a missing tooth on a smile. He was counting. He was always counting. Jaime followed him down. He did not want to. He wanted to lie in the straw with his eyes shut and the bells beating a tattoo in his skull until he slept and woke to find he had not been anyone else. But he went. The Queen's Hall was hot. The jars were still stacked like skulls under boots, and the guards looked at them with the expressions of men who are holding a friend underwater and trying not to be sick. Cersei sat, no longer flushed with wine, hair disordered, eyes hard. Joffrey had returned and perched on the throne like a cat that has escaped drowning and does not know if it wants to go and fight the river again. Sansa had vanished. Tommen slept in the sept, or played with carved horses in a room with 2 women and a prayer. Pycelle had rallied and was telling anyone who would listen that he had never doubted this ending. Haelene smiled the way cowards smile when they think they have survived their own cowardice. "You?" Cersei said when her father entered, and she rose as if she were aflame herself. "You," Tywin said. He walked to her and put a finger under her chin as if he might lift her head and see what was inside. "You will not use wildfire again without my leave. It saved us," she said, and some shred of pride still clung to the words, tatty and bleeding. "Tyrion's wildfire saved the river," Tywin said. "Jaime's sword saved your son. My army saved your seat. You saved nothing today but your own skin, and you tried to set a torch to it." She stared. She bit her lip once, hard enough to break it, and blood made war paint at one corner of her mouth. She looked at Jaime. There was nothing soft there. No sister, no lover, no little girl standing ankle-deep in a fish pond. "You betrayed me," she said again, but the strength had gone from the words. "I saved us," he said. He had not meant to say us. It was too generous. It made him want to laugh and weep at once. Tywin looked at Jaime. He did not nod. He did not say well done. "You will resume your duties," he said. "The city will sleep lightly tonight. You will set a double guard on every store of wildfire. You will find out who told Ser Mandon to kill the Hand." "I'll begin with the Queen," Tyrion said viciously. Cersei made a sound like a word, but it was not one. Tywin threw her a look that would have silenced a storm. "We will begin," he said, "with Varys." The spider appeared as if conjured, which was one of his better tricks. He bowed and murmured and did not sweat. "My lord," he said, "I am at your service." "You are at mine when I ask you," Tywin replied. "Until then you are at the wall with the other ornaments. Get out." Varys got out, his shoes making no sound on the stone. "Ser," Tywin said to Jaime, "go and tell the city it was saved by its king. The boy needs a banner for his bed." Joffrey smiled, delighted. He had done nothing but be led by the nose, but now he would strut. Jaime felt an anger then that was not hot but cold and deep as river water in winter. He swallowed it because swallowing was what he did when there was no better thing left to do. He bowed. He turned. He went to do what he was told. Night fell in fits and starts, as if the day had to be pushed away and did not want to leave. The bells rang until men's hands bled. The brothels lit their lamps. The septs filled and emptied and filled again. In the kitchens they boiled bones and tried to call that a feast. In the alleys men lay with their backs to walls so they would not be trampled. In the Guildhall Haelene counted his fingers and found them all. In little rooms behind shuttered shops men kissed wives they had not thought to see again, and in the yard behind a potter's the hound sat with his head to his knees and breathed like the sea. Jaime walked the wall. He did it until his calves ached and his heels burned and his eyes felt sanded. The men nodded to him. Some did not. Some were asleep on their feet. He took a cup from a boy and drank river water that tasted of ash and salvation. He looked down where the green still jittered in a few corners and thought he would not drink wine again for a week, a month, a year, forever. He reached without looking and a hand laid a bandage across his jaw with a soldier's gentleness. "You look like a man," Bronn said, coming up beside him. Who has betrayed a woman and saved 1,000 strangers and cannot decide which was the mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Jaime said, though the words tasted like water he had to force down. Course not, Bronn said cheerfully. How is the hand? Jaime asked. As ugly as ever, Bronn said. He bleeds like a man and drinks like one that never does. He told the cook to put twice as many onions in his soup and then fell asleep in it. He snores like an acorn rolling on a planed board. He will live, Jaime said, and something inside him loosened. Bronn made a small noise. He lives. The queen lives. The city lives. We all live to piss again. All the gods have been generous. He peered downriver. Do you think Roseboy will stay, Loras? Yes, Jaime said. His lord is not a man who leaves a table with half a loaf on it. Bronn laughed. Half a loaf. We are all crumbs with gold on them to men like that. He clapped Jaime on the back, as if he were not a lord, as if he were simply a man with a sword walking a wall. Sleep if you can, he said. Before some person with a title decides they need you to listen to their story about how they saved everyone by lighting a candle in the right window at the right time. Jaime did not sleep. He went to the sept instead, because the bells drew him, and in the shadows under a window edge, he stood where no one much would see him and watched a girl with hair the color of wheat kneel at the foot of a statue with a simple face. She had a little boy with her. She had no lion on her and no crown and no threat on her lips. She had a softness at the mouth that made him think, briefly, of another girl's mouth, but he chased that memory away with both hands. He did not want to remember the cold salt of that riverbank. He did not want to remember the curve of a jaw where a sword had bit. Sansa turned to go and saw him. Her face did not change. She looked at him as if he were a carving on a tomb. He nodded. She nodded. They passed in the narrow aisle like two people in a market, and when he had gone 3 steps he heard Tommen say, in a small brave voice, "Mother was crying," and Sansa replied, "Mothers do that, sometimes when they are happy." He did sleep then, on a bench in a guardroom, his cloak over him, his hand on the hilt of his sword. He dreamed of a hall full of green light and a voice that said burn them all and another voice that said no, and both voices were his. Morning found the city bristling with banners like a boar with quills. Tywin held court and made of the battle a carpet to roll from his feet. He called for men and they came. He smiled and he did not smile, and each meant a different kind of gratitude. He named the Tyrell saviors and watched them kneel for the compliment. He named Joffrey king again, as if the word needed renewing like oil in a lamp. He named Tyrion brave, which was either kindness or cruelty. It could be both with Tywin. He did not name Jaime anything at all. Cersei wore ivory and a smile that looked carved. She looked at Jaime once, a flick of eyes, a spit of thought. He felt his jaw ache under the bandage and put 2 fingers to it and pressed until pain made stars in his head. He left before the court was done. He left because if he stayed he would have to watch a boy be a king, and he had no heart for it. He left because if he stayed he would have to hear his father speak of duty as if duty were a lover that never turned her face away. On the wall again, afternoon heat beating the salt into his skin, he found Loras Tyrell looking out at the river. The boy had taken his helm off and set it on the stone. His hair had a life of its own, and it moved in the river breeze like the mane of a Pegasus in some stupid song. "Ser Jaime," Loras said, as if greeting a man in a garden. "I came to see where the green ran. I came to see where it ended," Jaime said. "It never ends," Loras said lightly. "It sinks unseen. You have a poet's way with pestilence," Jaime said. Loras smiled and did not take offense. "They say you saved the hand, that you killed one of your own brothers." He glanced sideways. "I do not know if that is chivalry or felicity." "It was necessary," Jaime said. He saw Mandan's empty eyes and his white cloak splashed with black mud and thought, no, it was something else. He decided not to say what. "How fares Highgarden today?" he asked instead, because it was the talk expected. "Hungry for halls," Loras said, "and for wives." He stood very straight for a moment and his mouth thinned. Then he smiled again, and it was a different smile now, all boy. I thought of my brother when I saw the green. I thought of him most when our banners went up. Isn't that perverse? I should have thought of him when the first blood spilled. I thought of him when we looked prettiest. We are each our own vanity, Jaime said, and wondered if he had meant to be so kind. Ride well, Ser Loras. Loras looked at him a long moment as if to read a thing written on his face. You too, he said at last, and left, cloak trailing. When the day was over, when there were fewer carts and more broommen for the blood and the pieces, when the cooks had made stew from bones and onions and called it victory, when the taverns had run dry and the whorehouses had not, Jaime returned to the Queen's Hall because he could not return. Cersei was alone there, alone, except for a single lamp and a peacock feather fan and her rage. She did not lift her head when he came. He had to stand before her like a petty, won her before she turned. You said you would be my end, she said. Do it. End me. No, Jaime said. You have ended us, she said. Perhaps, he said, and the word was a mercy he allowed himself. She rose. She was not beautiful in fury. She was hard and bright and dangerous, and there had been a time when that had been beauty to him. She stepped down and set her jaw, and the gesture put a little shadow under the cut on his own face. You think they will love you for this, she said. You think the city will remember you as the man with the white cloak who stood when the dogs ran. I think the city will forget me by next week, he said. I think they will remember the smell of smoke and then the smell of shit. I think they will go on baking bread and shitting and lying and sometimes telling the truth because they cannot help it. I do not do this to be a song. Why then? She demanded. Because I have had enough of fire, he said, and surprised himself by how little bitterness was left in it. He had expected it to taste like old wine gone to vinegar, tasted like water, tasted like air. He thought of a girl in a blue gown calling him monster and of a sword that would one day be read for him in a way that was clean, not filthy. He thought of his hand and shivered, as if someone had walked over the place where his lover's name was buried. Cersei stared as if he had made a word in a language she did not speak. He saw then how very lonely she was in her own head, a castle with no doors, a hearth where the fire had eaten the coals and left the ash to pretend to warmth. He did not pity her. He did not pity her. Go, she said. Go to your city. It is yours too, he said. She laughed like glass breaking. Not anymore. He left. The halls were quieter. His men exchanged him for their own thoughts. He walked the long corridor to his cell in the White Sword Tower and sat on the bed and took off his boots and stared at his feet. They were a soldier's feet, calloused and nicked. He marveled that they had carried him here, and yesterday, and years ago to a throne and a king with a gold cloak and the smell of piss and a sword. He lay back. He did not sleep. He felt the city moving around him like a beast too big to be seen in one glance, breathing in alleys and exhaling across rooftops, twitching in the hairline cracks of a cistern, sighing as a child found a lullaby inside a prayer. He put his palm across his jaw where the cut was scabbing and he smiled because it hurt. At some point, the moon shouldered through the clouds and set a pale rectangle on the wall. A moth fluttered in it and made a little cross of shadow as if to bless him or doom him. He thought of all the names men had given him: Kingslayer, Oathbreaker, Lannister, Lion, Bastard, Brother, and he picked up one in his mind that had not yet been given and waited. He did not know if it fit. He would try it on when no one watched and see if he could make it sit. In the morning, he put on his cloak and went to the yard to drill. He did it because it was his duty and because there was a boy with hair the color of straw and a smile like summer who had slept in the sept and would need men with clean blades to stand before him while he learned to be used by other men. He did it because the chain still lay across the river and had to be lowered and raised and lowered until it could be trusted. He did it because the jars still sat under boots and he wanted to hear the men's boots creak over them each hour like a church bell to remind him that mercy can be heavy. When the city's heat at last rose white and full and the sours of men's labor puffed under the walls, when the flies grew drunk and the cats slept with their mouths open under barrels, when the singers came out to sell whatever songs they had, the first one that found a corner on the Street of Sisters lifted a cracked voice and began, and Jaime stopped a moment to listen because one of the pleasures of life is knowing what lies will be told about you. They called him the man who kept the flame. They called him a Kingsguard with a clean blade. They lied about the number of men he had killed. They lied about his hair. They lied about the words he had spoken on the wall. They did not lie about the green. When the song ended, someone threw a copper and someone else threw a stone. The singer dodged both and bowed to both and began again. And the city, heedless and hungry, moved on. In his tower, that afternoon Tywin was counting ships. In her hall, Cersei counted grudges and found she had enough to last 10 winters. In the barracks, Sandor Clegane sat with his head in his hands and discovered he had not shaken the smell of fire from the back of his throat. In a little room behind the kitchens, Sansa held Tommen's hand and told him a story about a boy who loved cats more than crowns. And Jaime, on the parapet in the hour before dusk, let the river wind lift his hair and looked at the bay where the chain had been and the green had burned and thought, for the first time since he had been 17, that he might yet be the man he had once imagined. A white sword, an oath with a heart in it, a hand steady enough to keep a city from its own worst desire. He stood there until the first bats came out and the bells lifted the evening prayer. Then he went down into the city he had saved and that did not know itself saved, and he made his way to the places where he was needed and not wanted and where he was wanted and not needed, and he studied men's faces the way a gambler studies dice. He would do this tomorrow and tomorrow after that and leave the wildfire sleeping in its jars and the chain rusting and the songs getting the words wrong. And one day, perhaps, when men cursed or kissed him for something he had not done, it would matter less. The work would lie in his bones then, the way a sword lies in a scabbard. The T has learned its shape. For now, he walked the stones he had kept from cracking with heat, and he let the city's noise pour over him like bathwater. He believed, if only for the space between one bell and the next, that betrayal could be a truer kind of love than fidelity, that a blade turned the right way might be the hand that lifts, that there are fires you keep not by feeding but by starving. And he kept walking, and he kept his hand on his sword, and the wind off the Blackwater cooled the line of blood Cersei had made along his jaw, and the taste of iron in his mouth faded to something that was almost sweet. On the rocks beyond the mouth of the bay, a man clung to a splintered spar and tried not to die. He had not meant to live. He had meant to carry onions and his king's stubbornness into the mouth of a green hell and come out with smoke in his beard and laughter in his chest. Instead, there was water in his lungs and salt under his eyelids and a pain in his ribs, as if someone were stepping on his breastbone and weighing his heart in his heel. Davos Seaworth spat and choked and spat again. A gull watched him with the patient contempt of sailors' birds. He had lost his sons to the river's mouth and the city's teeth. He had lost the Black Betha to screaming fire with a beast's voice. He had lost none of his faith in the simple things. That water will find its level, that a rope should be coiled counter to the way it twists, that a man should keep his oaths to the man he has called king, even if that king's god is a woman who burns images and men with the same rapture in her face. He clung until his palms went raw, and then he crawled like a beetle onto a slab of rock polished clean by 1,000 years of waves. He lay there and let the salt dry into armor on his skin. When he squinted, he could see the city as a low smear of gold and smut. When he closed his eyes, he saw green. "My boys," he said. The gull cocked its head. "I know," Davos told it. "I know. The Father judges. He is fair. I do not like him." On the third day, Salador San's men hauled him like a netted fish over a rail, and into the belly of a ship that smelled of clove and char. Salador himself came with wine and stories and a lament for burned sails that grew grander each time he told it. "You see," the Lysine said, rolling his rings along his fingers so the little stones made a small music. "We do not die when men say we will. We die when we decide the song is done. I am not yet finished with my song." "I am not finished either," Davos said. His voice was a strip of leather. "Your king sulks," Salador said. "He glares at the sea and glares at his wife and glares at the wall. Dragonstone is a very glared-at place, but it has good wine and I am a forgiving man. I will sell you back for cheap." "I do not want selling," Davos said. "I want to be thrown at him like a stone." Salador laughed and patted him as if he had said something clever. "Always the rock," he said. "My onion, you will crack your king's teeth if you go on." But come, I will take you to the place where hope grows mold. Dragonstone loomed out of the gray like a guilt remembered. Davos drew his bag from his neck because his hand knew the habit before his mind had words for it and found nothing there. He had lost his bones long ago. He had lost the luck they held twice now, once to a king, once to a god. He went up the long stair with a body that had not yet forgiven him and came into a hall perfumed with ash. Stannis Baratheon sat under a wing of carved stone and stared at a table shaped like a kingdom. A woman in red stood a little apart, her eyes the color of coals that have been blown on. Men who stank of the sea and men who stank of the mountain air stood along the walls with their hands quiet. "Your Grace," Davos said, his knees finding the stone with the ease of an old habit. "I failed." "You live," Stannis said without warmth and without surprise. "Most men do not." "I am sorry for your loss," Davos said. He said it of the ships and of the sons he thought Stannis had not known enough to mourn. The king's jaw moved once. "They burned us," Stannis said. He said it like a fact from a ledger. "The ships burned. My hand stiffens in rain. My wife is thin. The city burned my men." "The Lannister dwarf did it with green fire," said the woman in red, her voice smooth as oil. "But it was not his doing. He was salt on a fresh wound. The wound was the seven. They have eaten this land's heart. When something is rotten, it must be cut free. I saw men burned like saltfish," Davos said, standing because he could not stay on his knees while she talked about cutting. "I saw your god's fire do that on your beach. I did not like it then, my lady. I like it less now." She smiled at him. It was not a friendly smile. It was a smile a hawk might give a vole it had not decided to eat. "You do not like many things you have not tasted," she said. "But you have tasted defeat, and yet here you stand, Lord of Flea Bottom and Salt. Your god is not here. Perhaps he drowned." "I have no god but the seven," Davos said. "Then you have seven and none," she replied. "A woman who loves seven men loves none of them wholly. One god gives more and takes more. He is hungry. He eats falsehoods. He eats lies told to children so they will not cry." Stannis's hand clenched on the edge of the table so hard the veins ridged like ropes. "Enough," he said to both of them. He dragged his gaze from the red woman and put it on Davos the way a man might put his hand on a wall after a stumble. "You failed me," he said, "but only because I failed myself, listening to a woman instead of to what my eyes told me." "Your eyes are fine," the red woman said, and the words put a chill down Davos's spine that had nothing to do with the sea. "Your will is finer. I have seen a shadow do your will. I have seen. And a king's blood call wolves like dogs. The road to the throne is not through the river. It is through the heart." "Your Grace," Davos said, his mouth dry with a fear that had not saved him at sea. Do not listen to this. There are other roads. There is winter coming and men's bellies and the iron of their plows." "Do not tell me of winter," Stannis said, and for a heartbeat his voice lifted like a sword. "Ask the Mormonts about winter. Ask the Umbers. Do you think I do not know? Do you think I would not save them and their north and their seven gods if I could? But I am a man with a table for a kingdom and a castle that eats coal and an army that went to salt. I will take what weapons I can, Onion Knight. If there is any king's blood to be spilled that is not mine, I will spill it." Davos took a breath and made a plan without any wisdom in it and all the love a man could carry. He would kill the woman in red. He would save his king from the worst part of himself the way a mate drags a drunk from the inn before the wife sees and the children cry. He would fail, perhaps. He would die. He was tired of not doing the thing that needed doing because someone with a fairer cloak said no. When he tried it, in a narrow stair later, with a knife that had buttered bread and not much else, her eyes had already been waiting in the dark. The knife clinked to the steps and his wrist burned, and men in mail came up around him like fish around a net. Stannis looked at him from the top of the stair, saying nothing. "I do not hate you," the king said at last. "I wish I could." "Do not put him to death," the red woman murmured. "He speaks for all the little fires in men's hearts. We do not need those just now. We need a blaze. Put him in a cell under the stone. He will keep. They dragged Davos down to a black place that smelled of wet and regret, and behind him Melisandre's voice rose on a song that had no words a child would know. In the city they had tried to burn, another man woke from a dream of heat and did not reach for the woman he had always reached for first. He woke to find a boy asleep in a chair with a dagger in his lap and a splotch of drool at the corner of his mouth. Podrick Payne came awake with a start that sent the dagger skittering across the rushes. "Sir," he gasped, before his eyes had finished telling him whom he faced. My lord. Sir Lord. Sir. Pick something and keep it," Jaime said, swinging his legs over the side of the pallet. His neck ached where the helmet had wrung his skull, and his jaw pulled where Cersei's knife had kissed him. He touched the bandage and found no new blood. "How does the hand fare?" "The maesters put stitch thread in him," Pod said, his face alight with the importance of what he was saying. "They sent a raven for more poppy because Shay, that is, the woman, She shouted at them, and then Varys came and said perhaps we could manage with porridge if the poppy would not come, and then Lord Bronn said porridge is for piss, and then he stole a bottle from a guard and—" "You saved his life," Jaime said, cutting through the flood kindly because the boy would drown in his own words otherwise. "You stood up with a dagger in a field full of men and kept him from bleeding out like a pig. Don't shake your head. I saw you after. Your hands were red to the elbows and you were shaking, and you did not stop until someone made you stop." He held Podrick's brown eyes with his own. "I did not thank you last night because my mouth was tired of being a mouth. I am thanking you now." Podrick's ears went scarlet. He made a noise that might have been yes or might have been a squeak. "I did not," he managed. "I mean, I would have, but you, Ser Mandon, and you," he swallowed. "He would be dead if it hadn't been you." Jaime shrugged. He had never liked thanks in any case. "You will be his shadow," he said, standing. "Better his shadow than his ghost." Pod nodded solemnly as if it were a riddle that needed to be solved by doing it. When Jaime stepped into the hall, he heard the city already. Pots, curses, a rooster trying to make a prayer of its stupidity. He went to see his brother first. Tyrion lay swaddled in linens that had once been white and now bore red vines where the stitches had wept and smeared. Shay sat at the edge of the bed with her hands tucked under her thighs the way girls keep from fidgeting when they know men are looking. Varys was there like a smoke shadow, and Bronn leaned against the wall with his boot heel knocking a quiet beat on stone. "I did not die," Tyrion said, as if offering a rumor he did not expect to be believed. "You are extraordinarily bad at it," Jaime said. He stood over the bed as if it were the map table and his brother a coin on it. "Don't loom," Tyrion said. "You will make me feel small." "You are small," Bronn remarked, "but you bleed like a big man. Spits like one, too." He jerked his chin at Jaime. "You did that with the Kingsguard. Everyone is singing about it on the Street of Flower, and badly." Jaime ignored the sellsword the way one ignores a cat that has found the meat on the counter and is pretending not to be on the counter. He looked at Varys. "Will I be surprised when we discover whose hand moved Ser Mandon?" "Surprise is an indulgence," Varys said, spreading his hands. "We must save such sweets for children and old men." "Say the name," Tyrion said. "It is the name you expect," Varys said. "Or one of three, which is to say it is half the court. Some men serve because they have sworn to, and others because their bellies prefer the weight of coin to the weight of hunger. Some do not know they serve until they are told. Ser Mandon did not know. He does not know anything now, except what you showed him at the end." "I showed him that I am annoying to kill," Tyrion said. His mouth twitched. "Thank you. I thought you sigh." "You didn't want thanks," Bronn said to Jaime, grinning. "I don't," Jaime said. He felt only relief and an odd petulant anger, as if someone had snatched away a familiar burden and left his hands empty and stupid. "I'll take your silence instead. I gave you that last night when I didn't tell people how you ran up to the Queen's Hall like your hair was on fire," Bronn said, unoffended. "You saved jars. Gods bless you. They are guarded now," Jaime said. "2 men on every lot with orders to stand on them if the floor shakes for any reason." Island Payne will walk with a limp and Haleen will piss when he hears a match strike. That will have to do. Careful, Tyrion said. If you make too many enemies for the queen, you will have none left for yourself. I have plenty, Jaime said. Father wishes to speak to me about marriage. Tyrion gagged on a laugh and then winced because the laugh pulled stitches. Ah, yes, he said through his teeth. He tried to arrange my wedding bed yesterday and failed. The gods send his hand better luck with yours. Will you leave the white cloak for a red bed? No, Jaime said. It surprised him how quickly it came out and how certain it sounded in the air. I won't. Tyrion's eyes sharpened. You mean to be a knight? I mean to be one, Jaime said. I have worn the cloak. I have not been what the cloak makes a man. It feels like a jest told in a language I do not speak. But I can learn a few words. He thought of a girl with blue eyes and a jaw set like winter. He thought of Ares's blood on stone. He thought of the jars that hummed when you carried them, as if something in them wanted to be incarnated and devour and be devoured. Shay shifted on the bed. He saved you, she said. Her eyes were bright and clever and dangerous. He saved you from your family. Tyrion looked at her as if she were a doorway and then at Jaime as if he were the hall beyond. Family is the thing we tie around our throats to keep from forgetting where our heads are, he said. Family, Varys murmured, as if sampling the shape of the word with his tongue. It lifts us to a throne or it pushes us down to a gutter. Sometimes it does both in one afternoon. In the throne room, Bronn interposed with the bluntness Grace cannot blunt. Your father and the Lord of Flowers are about to make a piece of theater. Might interest you, might make you spit. I do both at once as a rule, Tyrion said. Go, brother, go see. Bring me back a part where I am clever. Jaime went. He went because duty hooked him and because curiosity did. He went because the sound of the bells had wound down into mutters and a new sound rose like flies, the murmur of courtiers putting on their faces for each other. The great hall was a bloom of silks. Marjorie Tyrell stood in a gown the color of a young leaf with small pearls like dew along the low edge of her bodice. Her hair was a field in wind. She smiled the smile of a girl who had learned to make a room love her. Joffrey sat on the throne high and sharp. He was still a boy with a cat's delight in cruelty and the suddenness of a child's temper, but he had learned one new trick, how to lie by standing very still. Cersei wore red and a smile like a scar. Tywin stood below the steps with his hands on the pommel of a sword that did not need to be drawn to be felt. Lord Mace Tyrell beamed beside him like a baker who had pulled 12 loaves and 1 ham from his oven by accident and was prepared to be praised for both. The realm requires stability, Tywin said, and he said it as if he were saying the realm requires air. The traitor Robb Stark refuses to bend the knee. The traitor Stannis Baratheon has been hurled back from the walls. It pleases the king to take for his lady a rose, as is fit for a lion. Joffrey stood and looked at Marjorie with a hungry child's calculation. Lady Marjorie, he said, I set you above all women. Will you take my hand and be queen? Marjorie glanced at Cersei where a different kind of hunger twitched, and at Tywin where a satisfaction hummed, and at Joffrey as if he were a mirror she would learn to love as she loved her own face for what it might one day have seen. Your grace honors me, she said. I would be a queen that serves the realm. Serves, Cersei said in a voice too low to carry. Jaime, standing near enough to hear, had the absurd desire to press his fingers to his sister's lips to keep the next word from escaping. And Lady Sansa, Joffrey said, almost as an afterthought and with a relish he did not bother to hide, shall be released from any promise that bound her to me. Her father's treason cannot make her queen. It cannot make her anything but the girl she is. Sansa stood at the edge of the throng with her hands clasped. The skin on the back of her wrists was very white. She bowed her head, and when she lifted it, there was a smile like thin ice. She did not look at the queen. She looked at no one in particular and everyone all at once, and she said, in a voice that might have been prayer, I am his grace's loyal servant. Jaime saw the tremor in her fingers only because he had his eyes for the small things now, for stitches and fuses and boys holding daggers in their sleep. He saw Peter Baelish's gaze slide over her and away as if measuring. He saw Varys's lids drop, schooling his eyes to mildness. He saw his father's mouth not move at all. After, when the court broke into laughter and plans and shadows and men began to measure the new corridors down which they might run their plots, Littlefinger sidled to the dais with the ease of an eel through weed. "Your Grace knows," he purred, "how much Highgarden has done for us, and how much I did for Highgarden. Bitterbridge is a long road, but not so long when a man runs for love." Tywin allowed him to be clever because it cost him nothing. "You shall have your reward," he said. "You enjoy a haunted seat, I am told." "Harrenhal," Peter said, setting an innocent look on his face as a mummer puts on a false nose. "A sad old hall. It needs laughter. It needs men," Tywin said. "Find some." Then, to Joffrey, in a voice the hall could hear, "The realm is grateful to Lord Peter Baelish for his part in bringing the Tyrells to our aid. We name him Lord Paramount of the Trident and give him Harrenhal and all the lands that owe it fealty. He will rule with wisdom and love." Peter bowed so low his hair nearly brushed the floor. He did not blush. He never blushed. His eyes flicked to Sansa again and then were gone. Jaime stepped away before the perfumed air made him gag. On the landing outside the hall, he found Sandor Clegane leaning his shoulders against the stone, as if he meant to push the castle over by apathy alone. The hound's eyes were bleary and his jaw rough with a dazed disdain. He stank of wine and smoke. "You will be missed at the feast," Jaime said. "Fuck the feast," Sandor said, too tired to find imaginative words. "They call it victory," Jaime said. "They can call it a saint's arse for all I care," Sandor replied. He blinked at Jaime. "You kept your queen from lighting the pot under us. You got brave all at once. I saw your face down there, Kingslayer. I thought, he's found a different dog to chase." "I found the same one," Jaime said, and it felt like a confession he had been waiting to make. "I just ran faster." Sandor snorted. "They'll make you the hero and me the coward. The only difference between us is you kept your sword up while you pissed yourself." "I did not piss myself," Jaime said mildly. "I did," Sandor said, "and I will again. I'm done. I'm done with this city and these pretty boys and their green piss and their brave songs. There's a girl in this place who thinks prayers can keep her skin. I told her once that prayers don't stop a boot. I'll tell her again. Then I'll be gone." He shoved away from the wall. "Tell your nephew I quit if you like. Tell your father. Lights won't burn in my windows tonight. I'll be a darkness somewhere beyond them." "You'll have your pay," Jaime said, "because there are things a man must do, and one of them is pay another man who decides to make his own road. Take a horse and be gone. If a guard stops you, say Jaime Lannister told you to go to hell and take the long way." Sandor stared at him for a beat that might have been respect if either of them liked the shape of the word. "You're a fool," he said, and walked away into the palace like a fire gone out. That night, somewhere between moonrise and drunk, Sandor Clegane went to the little tower where Sansa slept and told her she could come with him. He was not drunk enough to be kind, but he was not sober enough to be cruel. He held out his cloak and she did not take it. She sang him a song instead and he wept and cursed and left his cloak anyhow. In the morning Jaime found the cloak folded careful as a prayer on the bench by the sept door and no hound on any of the walls. The days found their rhythm, as days will even after the world thinks it has ended. In the river the chain creaked and rattled like an old bone. Men in Tyrell Green laughed too loud and courted girls who had always believed themselves too plain for courtiers. Men in Lannister Red smiled too thin and watched the Tyrells play with knives and feathers. Tywin called councils where he spoke and others measured their words. Marjorie moved through the city like a soft wind. Shops opened when she passed and women dipped little curtsies and men bowed and no one spat. Cersei drank and smiled and whispered, and Tommen began to sleep with a cat at his feet. Jaime's father called him to the solar with the hanging maps and the good wine and the rare silence. "Sit," Tywin said, not asking, and Jaime stood. "I have told the king," Tywin said, "that the realm needs you where you were born to be. The Kingsguard have 7. I have one heir and he has a shield and a vow that serves someone else. My vow serves the realm, Jaime said. Your vow serves the boy, Tywin said without turning. Because his mother took a knight's oath and used it as a chain for a bedpost. You will set aside the cloak. You will marry a girl with good hips who knows when to stop talking. You will give me grandchildren who are not toads. You will go to Casterly Rock and breathe air that is not made from old piss. No, Jaime said. He did not raise his voice. It was a relief to discover the words sounded the same no matter how many times he said it. I will not. Tywin turned then, very slowly, as if he had been rusted and needed to work himself loose. You, he said, weighing the pronoun as if he could make it heavier by pushing the syllable with his tongue. Are my son. I am your son, Jaime said. He kept his hands at his sides because if he put them on anything he did not trust them not to break it. And a man of the Kingsguard. If I go, it will be because I am a coward. You did not raise a coward. I raised an obedient son, Tywin said. You raised a man who could kill a king and sleep afterward, Jaime said, and this time he said it for weapon and for truth. I have spent years paying for it by not sleeping at all. If I leave the cloak now, I will have to invent a reason I respect. I do not have one. Tywin's face smoothed. He could put on calm like a glove. You will consider, he said. I have, Jaime said. Very well, Tywin said. He poured himself wine as if the motion might be mistaken for relenting. You will find who put Ser Mandon in the hand's path. You will keep the wildfire dry and the pyromancer dry-faced. You will see the hound does not come slinking back into the kennels. You will teach the boy Tommen not to be a fool. You will remind the king that his hand should be grateful to his hand. He drank. You will keep tea. His city from embarrassing me. On which point would you like me to begin? Jaime asked. All of them, Tywin said. Now. He left his father's solar and found Varys in the corridor. His hands folded like a sleepy spider's. You keep such good lists, the eunuch murmured. You will need 2 more hands. He lowered his voice. A singer with a bad memory and a better boat asked this morning whether the queen might wish to purchase a story about jars and fuses. Such men are like mushrooms, delicious fried, poisonous otherwise. Pay him to go away, Jaime said, and then find someone to make him forget he knows how to row. Varys inclined his head. You have such a gift for mercy. I have a gift for the city still being here in a week, Jaime said. Anyone who keeps it that way is my friend. Anyone who doesn't is a story with a short last chapter. Such grimness, Varys sighed theatrically. It becomes you. In the days that followed, Jaime learned the city the way a mason learns the stones he has not shaped but must live with. He went down into tunnels where the air had the breath of a man who had been eating garlic in fear. He took Haleen by the pale hand and led him to places where jars squatted like old gods, sealed and patient. He ordered them moved with the care one gives a sleeping viper. He set up watches and double watches. He learned the names of 20 men who could keep their mouths closed, and then he learned 30 more because 20 is never enough. He went into the queen's presence when he must. They spoke like 2 men who have shared a foxhole and now must live in a town with streets. She was dazzling some days and dull as a stone on others. He did not put his hand on her without need. She did not put hers on him. Once she said, I loved you when you were cruel, and he said, I loved you when you were kind. And they both laughed and were glad to be rid of tenderness. It frightened them more than anger. He went to Tommen's lessons when the boy would have no one in the room whose face did not scowl. The master-at-arms showed the boy how to hold a practice sword. Jaime showed the master-at-arms how to talk to a child. He found Tommen in a window seat one afternoon with a cat in his lap. His mouth a small O of concentration as he tried to tie a knot. Jaime sat beside him and showed him how rope had a will of its own and how you must persuade it, not force it. Tommen smiled like sunrise when he made the knot. Jaime laughed aloud and then stopped, embarrassed by the pleasure in the sound. He saw Sansa when he had to and not otherwise. She kept herself folded in, eyes careful, hands neatly composed. Marjorie sat with her sometimes and made gentle talk. Highgarden is very green, Marjorie would say. You cannot imagine how often the wind smells of apple. You must come when you can. Wouldn't that be lovely? Sansa would smile and say yes softly, the way you answer a child's question you cannot answer. Peter Baelish spoke to the girl to be kind, and to the queen to be admired, and to Tywin to be rewarded. He spoke to Jaime once, with a tilt to his head as if to make him smaller so that he could be measured with a finger. You are a new man, he observed, smiling. It suits you. I am very old, Jaime said. I merely forgot to act my age. He who forgets his part makes enemies of the audience, Littlefinger said. I should know. I have tuned more than one applause into silence. You turn what is in front of you into coin, Jaime said. This makes you clever. It does not make you honest. Honesty is a forum for men who enjoy losing, Littlefinger said, and bowed and went to find a man who wanted to be told a lie he already half believed. When he thinned out the people who knew about the jars by paying some and terrifying others and sending one or two to the wall beneath false names, Jaime began to sleep again in stretches long enough for dreaming. In his dreams, a girl in blue pushed or through Blackwater and called him by a name that was not an insult. When he woke, he did not say the name. He had put that part of his road behind him and locked the door not because he did not want to open it, but because it would suck him out like a river if he did. Stannis brooded on his rock. Ravaged men came and went from Dragonstone with salt in their beards and stories that grew in the telling. Salador San put his ships where the wind blew his prophets. Melisandre burned a wooden man in the courtyard and said it was a god, and men's mouths shut because their bellies wanted bread and their fear wanted certainty. A raven flapped from Dragonstone to King's Landing with a letter that no one chose to read aloud at court. Tywin read it and did not change his face. Varys read it and smiled and sent a boy to buy a bird in a cage and set the bird loose in the Queen's September as if it were a prayer given feathers. Tyrion let his stitches dry and then went to sit at the small council table with a hat pulled low over one ear to hide a scar that did not need hiding. Cersei said, "You look very brave," and meant yes and meant no. Tywin allowed him to speak and listen to him the way men listen to a noise in the room they cannot identify and cannot ignore. Joffrey discovered that when he tried to strike Tyrion with words, there were new calluses in the little man that kept the words from cutting to the quick. Shae pinched the coins that flowed toward her like wine into a wide-bellied jug and did not spill any. One night, the city had a wind and a stillness together, which is a Weather King's Landing sometimes likes to wear. Jaime walked the halls with his heel click echoing. In the yard below the White Sword Tower, he saw 3 men in gold cloaks talking in the hush men use when what they say would make their mothers cry. He leaned over the parapet and listened. It was his habit now. He had learned that a city speaks true, or when it thinks it speaks to itself. Small boat at the river, one said. Dantos took her, the old fat knight. I saw the oars skitter like a spider. Littlefinger's man, said another. She won't get far, said the third, doubt in the words like grit. We'll catch them. Not you, said Jaime from above, and the men jumped like fish at thunder. You will walk to the mud gate and you will tell the captain there that you saw a rat run, and then you will forget you have eyes. If anyone asks you where you were tonight, you will say you were bedding the same whore you always bed and that you have a scab on your prick to prove it. And you will not be lying. He paused. If you do not understand why I am saying this, you are a fool. If you do, you are not. Either way, go. They went because a white cloak in the dark with a voice like that is a thing men do not choose to test. Jaime stayed on the parapet and watched the shiny black of the river under the stars. A little boat with 2 oars made a cross on blackness. 2 shadows in it might have been a fat drunk and a girl with her heart like a rabbit's, beating and beating. He did not follow. He did not wake his father. He did not ask the spider to weave. He did nothing, which is sometimes the thing a man must do when he has decided to be a different man in the morning than he was in the afternoon. She will be safer anywhere but here, he said to the night. The city will be quieter without her, said a voice near his shoulder, so soft it might have come from the stones. He did not startle. Varys had made a game of that. How close can I step? How loudly can I breathe? Before a man who knows that I love him least of all knows I am present. She will be a piece for men who know a board when they see one, Varys added. But she is a clever piece. She may pretend to be a pawn long enough to find a file. She is a child, Jaime said. All my birds are children, Varys said, and the sadness there was real and made him more dangerous. Shall I send a bird after her? Send it anywhere but after her, Jaime said. Feed it. Tell it to fly over fields it has not seen. Tell it to sleep in hedgerows. You grow sentimental, Ser, Varys murmured. It looks different on you than cruelty. It is less flattering on some men. On you it is humbling. I have much to be humbled for, Jaime said. Oh, Varys said, and then said no more. By morning Sansa Stark was smoke and rumor, and Peter Baelish was a lord with a new thing to grin about, and Cersei was a storm in a gown. She sent for Lancel and did not send him. She poured wine and did not drink it. She stared at Jaime as if he had taken something that belonged to her. She is a knife, she said. You put it to my throat. I put it to mine, Jaime said. She would have been useful, Cersei hissed. She would have been dead, Jaime said. Cersei's mouth curled. Everything dies. Not today, Jaime said, and her eyes flinched before she could stop them. If there was a quiet in the city that day, it was a quiet of expectation, not peace. The Tyrell men marched their horses through the market square and bought sweetmeats for girls, and the girls laughed and hid their teeth. The Red Keep breathed out the smell of new straw in stalls and old plans in chairs. Joffrey shot at pigeons from a high window until a feather stuck to his sleeve like a pennon. Tyrion stood on the ramparts and made jests until his jests could no longer keep out the damp of what he remembered, and then he went below and sat with a book and made the words behave for him the way men would not. Jaime drilled with the Kingsguard. They were 4 men and 2 boys and 1 man who had not yet learned the part his face must play. He cut with them and parried with them and watched them. Ser Boros was slack and greedy and would die if the city made him work again. Ser Osmond watched Jaime with a half-smile and weighed him like a cut of meat. Ser Aerys Oakhart was stiff and earnest and careful. He would break in the hand of the man who could not tell his weight. Ser Balon Swan was a good man and a good fighter and an uninteresting one, which is often a blessing. Loras Tyrell watched with a boy's hunger and a man's serenity. When they sparred, he pressed and pressed again, and tried to make Jaime prove every story Loras had told himself about him. You are slower than I imagined, Loras said, panting, sweat making his hair a dark gold. I am older than you imagined, Jaime said. He fainted high and cut low, and Loras bit his lip when the practice blade kissed his calf. And you make too much of the song you think you're in. Is that not what you do? Loras asked, breathless. It is what I used to do, Jaime said, and stepped inside the other's guard and plucked the sword from his hand as a man plucks an apple. Loras laughed even as he lost. He loved the thing itself. The sway of weight, the small slaps of boot on dirt, the satisfaction of a trick learned. Tyrion came to the yard with a letter in his hand and an expression that meant the words there had not adored him. If I ask you, he said to Jaime between rounds, whether you had a hand in the maiden's vanishment, will you tell me no so that I may call you a liar and be comforted? I did nothing, Jaime said. Gods, Tyrion said. You are telling the truth. I hate truth. It is so useless in practice. She would have died here, Jaime said. She may die where she has gone, Tyrion said. She will die somewhere, Jaime said. So will we all. Between now and then she may be free for an hour. Tyrion looked at him as if measuring a man he had known from the height of a table and discovered him farther away and closer both. You have become a philosopher, he said. 7 save us. 7 save you, Jaime said. I'll save the city again if I have to. That will be enough, W. Orc for 1 man in 1 life. And if the city tries to save itself by burning? Tyrion asked. It likes to do that. Then I will do what I did, Jaime said. Again and again until it stops wanting to burn or I die. It is not complicated. Nothing is, Tyrion said, amused and sad. Until it is. That night he dreamed of a little cell under Dragonstone and a man telling a king that gods who ask for children's fires are the worst kind of liars. The next day 2 crows came and tore a rag apart in the sky. The third day a singer put Jaime in a song again, this time as the man who pulled the hand from the fire like a chestnut and worlds better at it than the hand. The fourth day Queen Cersei sent for Jaime at midnight, and when he arrived she kissed his mouth once, hard, and then told him to go to hell. He went, and found the White Sword Tower sufficient. On the 5th day a boy came from the north with a letter that smelled of horse and snow. Robb Stark had won another battle on a road no map on Tywin's walls showed. And Lord Tywin smiled without showing teeth and moved beans from one bowl to another as if they were men. Plans uncoiled in the hall like sleeping snakes being woken and fed mice. Jaime looked at the beans and thought of bells and jars and boats in the night, and a boy asleep with a cat on his foot, and a girl running for a ship with a fat knight who had once been brave. He found himself, without meaning to, walking down to the river in the hour before dawn. The chain was down now, slack and glistening like an old scar. The water made its own sense in the dark, chuckling to itself. He stood on the stones and felt the damp climb his boots. He thought of a woman in blue in a boat, and of another woman in red and a fire, and he decided that lore, the word men put to old stories and old ways to excuse new cruelties, was only as strong as the hands that held it and the mouths that spoke it. He would not be one more mouth making a lie heavy. He would be a hand that lifted when he could. He would be a hand that took away a fuse and put in a sword instead. When the sun came, the city woke and called him sire and cursed him and asked him for bread and asked him for mercy and asked him why the hound had gone, and where the girl had fled and whether the queen bled and what the hand had said and whether the dwarf loved the whore and whether the Tyrell boys could be trusted and whether the jars had all been counted. He answered none of it and all of it. He walked the length of a day, and at the end of it he was not a different man. He was only a man with fewer excuses. On Dragonstone, Davos Seaworth counted his breaths by the drip of water from the ceiling and entertained himself by teaching a rat to take crumbs from his fingers. When the door opened and light did not come in, he knew it was not a jailer. A woman in red stood in the dark like a memory of heat. "You have been speaking to your god," she said. "I have been speaking to the stones," Davos said. "They have better manners." "I have seen a king's fall and a city's salvation," Melisandre said. Her voice was not unkind. "I have seen a man in white keep a flame from eating him. He will do it again." Davos said a word to the rat and let it go. He said another word that was too low for the woman to catch. He did not say anything to his king, who was not there to hear it. He did not promise anything to any god. He promised something to his sons and to the little fires in men's hearths. He promised that if a child's cry rose in this castle, he would put his hands to that sound and tear it away, even if it tore him with it. In the city, the bells rang for a wedding that would not happen for months. Cakes were baked and eaten by the men who were meant to carry them later. Marjorie gave Sansa a smile in public and a sweet in private. Sansa hid the sweet under her pillow for a day, and then took a bite and found it tasted like cinnamon and choice. Jaime took his place when the king went out, and when the queen came in, and when the hand spoke, and when the father did not. He became the thing he had said when he could not think of another thing to be. The man who does not let the fire eat, the blade turned the right way. He did it without expecting a song and without refusing one. When he slept, he dreamed of a hand that would not be there one day and decided to use both hands while he had them. He woke each morning to the smell of the river and the kitchens and the city's endless living, and he thought, with a steadiness that surprised him, that treason against one woman's ruin might yet be loyalty to an entire realm. He kept his watch. He kept the jars from waking. He kept a silence no one knew to thank him for. He kept a boy alive long enough to find a kinder man inside the crown, if there was one. He kept walking the walls. Far away, a murder of crows rose from a field where winter had laid its first thin hand. Closer, a singer tuned his lute and told a story as crooked as a river and as true. At the edge of the city, a sold horse stamped and snorted and pointed its nose east. In a chamber under red stone, a man counted the drips and loved the sound because it was not screaming. In a palace on a hill, a woman stared into wine and saw her own reflection and did not look away. On the river bank, a white cloak breathed and watched the water and imagined all the fires he would refuse to feed. The chain lay sleeping. The jars did too. The city did not.